Example number 1, I have a name for it because it's a very typical question that comes up. I call it a double triangle question. And one thing that's nice about this unit as compared to the last unit is that there's some very typical examples that come up, that if you recognize them, you'd solve them the same every single time, which puts them into an easier category. You don't have to problem solve as much. This is one of them. The beginning of this question, though, and these questions, often I think when the first time you read a question in grade 12 pre-calculus, this is one of the scariest sounding questions when you read it, because there's so much information. Given angle alpha in standard position with its terminal arm in quadrant 3, and cos of alpha is negative 3/5, and angle beta is in standard position in quadrant 2, and sine of beta is 1/3, what is sine of alpha plus beta? Non-calculator, here we go. Okay, so there's a lot of information, but once you recognize, okay, it has an alpha and a beta, I could draw a triangle for alpha, I could draw a triangle for beta, just like we did in chapter 6 questions. So if I draw my 4 quadrants, alpha's in quadrant 3. Draw an angle in quadrant 3 back to the x-axis, and then this is a reference angle, so it's your alpha reference angle. And if we know that cos of alpha is negative 3/5, that means the adjacent side is 3, the hypotenuse is 5. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Recognize this triangle? It's a 4 on the other side. So we already knew that cos of alpha was negative 3/5. Can you see now you also know what sine of alpha is? Sine of alpha will be quadrant 3 negative, opposite over hypotenuse, 4/5. That's triangle number 1. It's a double triangle question because we also need to draw a triangle for beta. So beta's in quadrant 2. Draw an angle in quadrant 2. Label a reference angle. Make a triangle back to the nearest x-axis. Because there's an angle alpha and an angle beta. We'll need a second triangle. I'll show you here in a second, because to figure out sine of alpha plus beta, we have a formula. Our formula says that sine of alpha plus beta is sine alpha cos beta plus cos alpha sine beta. We need both of them, so we need a triangle just to find the other one. So we already knew that sine of beta is 1/3, so we can label this side as 1 and this is 3. And we knew that sine of beta was 1/3. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Are you getting good at doing these in your head? Square root of 8. And so now we know that cos of beta is quadrant 2, cos is negative, negative square root of 8/3. Beta is one of my favorite Greek letters to draw. It's fun. So our double triangles, or both of our triangles, give us all the information we need for this next step. We want to find sine alpha plus beta. The formula says we can take sine alpha plus beta, write it as the right-hand side of the identity, sine alpha cos beta plus cos alpha sine beta, and our triangles have all that information given to us. So, at this next point, on the first time doing it, 50% of students, even though they've done this before, make a mistake in the next line. So I'm going to get I take a survey every year, and it's usually 50% will make the mistake and 50% won't. If I don't survey you, you will watch me do it and still make the same mistake on a quiz. It's one of those mistakes that Even if I show you the right way, you'll make it wrong the next time you try it, unless you make the mistake and I can tell you this is the mistake and you become really aware of it. So I'm going to take a survey. You're going to write the next line on the right-hand side, and I'm going to find out where this class is at. Okay, so what did we find out? 71% made the common mistake. You know what sine of alpha is. Sine of alpha is negative 4/5. That means all of this gets replaced with negative 4/5. Most of you just replace the alpha, right? Because you're used to replacing just one variable, but you don't know what alpha is. You know what sine of alpha is. If you want to find out what alpha is negative 4/5 on your pie plate? No, you would need a calculator. You do not know what alpha is. You do not know what beta is, but you know all of cos beta is negative root 8/3. All of cos of alpha is negative 3/5, and sine of beta is 1/3. Yeah, so like I said, even if I would have just, like, when I started teaching, I'm like, okay, we substitute in, I did this step, and then I go to test, and everybody be making this mistake. And I'm like, what's happening? Did I teach it wrong? No, but if you don't realize that mistake, you will make it again, okay? There are some of you, even though you realized it now, will still make it again on the next quiz. And then after that, you'll be like, oh, I can't believe I did that again. Then there's even a smaller group that, even though they said, I can't believe I did that again, will do it one more time on the test. And then hopefully by the time we get to the exam, that doesn't happen anymore. Usually the results are 50-50. You guys went 70-30. Okay, so and now you have to write your final answer as a single fraction. This is two fractions. Well, this is four fractions. How do you write it as a single fraction? Well, you'd have to multiply these together. This will be 4√8/15 plus negative 3/15. How do you add fractions? You need a common denominator. The very nice thing is right here, there is a common denominator of 15. How do we add the tops? Well, those aren't like radicals or not like terms. All you can do is write 4√8 minus 3 all over 15. That's a single fraction. And you're done. So try question 8 and question 13. What you'll notice in these questions is sometimes this is the easiest form where they tell you what quadrant it's in. Sometimes they make you figure out what quadrant it's in. For example, they could have said cos of alpha is negative 3/5 and tan of alpha is negative, is less than 0. Then you'd have to use your cast rule to find out it's quadrant 2. Or they could say cos of alpha is negative 3/5 and cosecant of theta is greater than 0. So then you have to think, okay, cosecant is sine. If cosecant's greater than 0, then sine is greater than 0. It's got to be in quadrant 1 or 2. It's got to be quadrant 2. So there would be those kind of things to make it just a little bit more figuring out. But this is a very typical 4-mark question that students get 4 out of 4 on because it's very predictable. Once you've done a couple of them, the math is not hard, but you have to be able to recognize and be able to do.